paralysis happened twice in the same week. And one time I was going to sleep, I was laying in bed, TV on, and I was like dozing off. But then I felt this surge of tingling going down my spine and throughout my whole body. And I knew it was coming. Like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I felt this surge of tingling throughout my whole body. And it freaked me out, and I couldn't move. Like, I was having sleep paralysis, and I wasn't even, like, fully asleep. Like, that was so bizarre. But it never happened again after that.
Tonight in the studio, a unique blend of Northwest and Southwest come together and we find common ground. Aliens, UFOs, and other normal stuff. Screaming Chuy is here and we get to hear about his alien life. That and more coming right up on My Alien Life, the podcast. My Alien Life is recorded live from atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you will find my email address, all previously recorded shows, and more. I am Cameron Brower. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Tonight we're going to discuss Southern Paranormal, and when I say Southern Paranormal, I mean the real South, Arizona, Southern California, and Mexico. My guest tonight has his own podcast called The Screaming Chuy Show. Screaming Chuy, thank you so much for joining me, sir, and welcome.
Hey, and thank you for having me, man. I love your show, by the way.
Love your show. I stumbled, it's cool, this whole podcasting thing, because I do a lot of research and basically I listen to other people's podcasts, and it doesn't matter what I listen to, I learn things. So I stumbled upon you, and I was going to do something about the South. So tell me about your show. Go ahead and let everybody know in on where they find your show, what the show's about, and different episodes that you've had, and what it's like.
Yeah, pretty much they can find it on any platform, they listen to their favorite podcast, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. And, I don't really have a certain niche or topic. It's just pretty much what I feel like talking about, It could be just random funny stuff or, many times or conspiracies, I just love that stuff, or mysteries like the Lost Past incident or aliens, supernatural, all the good stuff, the meaty stuff, right?
Exactly. And you've actually, I listened, you've done some paranormal shows. What are some of the paranormal things like UFOs and things like that you've touched on?
Yeah, so I did a little bit on a the Lost Past incident, and it's still an unsolved mystery, and it's got a it's not been proven exactly that's paranormal or UFO stuff, but I mean, it's kind of hard to deny it, if you look into that case. I've also myself had paranormal experiences with shadow people, and for many, many years, some people don't believe me, but hey, I'm not here to try and convince them. I'm just saying my story,
So one of the shows that I listened to earlier, I think it's your most recent one, you did a show on Slab City. And to me, Slab City is, I don't know, I have this fascination with the desert. And I think the reason why is because, You know, not only do weird things happen in the desert, and realistically, when you think about it, I grew up in north central Montana, where we don't get any. I mean, the desert gets more precipitation, rain, but we get it, you know, in certain times. In the winter, we get a lot of snow, and then we get some rain, but not much. And so it's deserty. In the summer, it's deserty, a lot of sagebrush, but it's the desert people. You know, you see people out there living in 4 school buses or 1 school bus. You know, and
the survivors,
right? And you could see them out there. You know, you could see these. You know, even on Google Maps, like if you're in the Mojave Desert, you can look out there on if you're out in the Mojave and see. And there, I wouldn't call it a house. You know, I wouldn't be living in a school bus out in the desert in the summertime, but people do it. You know, and that Slab City. Talk about Slab City and let everybody know where that is and what it is, because it's a pretty unique and interesting place.
Yeah, it is actually. And you know, like you said, like the desert. You know, it's in California, and it used to be a military base in WW2 and was later abandoned. And so there's no running water, no utilities, and people just pretty much park their RVs there, or you know, like you said, buses or whatever, and that's their home. You know, and there's no laws, no regulations. So pretty much people survive by trading, you know, food, water, or alcohol, whatever, right? The necessities. There's no really you know, even though a lot of people there do get mail, but they have to go to a next town over. There's a P.O. box there, and there's one store on the next town where they could get food and water, you know, by a hose outside. And, but it's, you know, like the desert gets really hot in the summertime. So many people leave, you know, the parked RVs, you know, they take the e-brake off and go somewhere else, somewhere cooler. But about 150 people still remain there year round, the hardcore ones.
So are they grouped up together, or are they spread out? I mean, it's kind of a big place at one time. And, so I don't know if they left behind homes when they decided not to develop there, because I know in the 50s and they thought through the 50s and 60s that they could develop something there, even casinos and things like that and clubs, and it just didn't really work out, did it?
Yeah, pretty much just abandoned part of California, just forgotten.
So you said there's about 150 people that live there. Have you had a chance to go there?
No, actually, if I did, I'd probably take some guns or something. I don't know, man. It sounds pretty apocalyptic, you know, post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, it looks like that. And I think you can kind of explore it a little bit on Google Maps. It's pretty amazing, and seeing the different encampments. YouTube has a lot of videos on it, and I've thought about doing a show there, but I actually want to go there. Back in the day, that would be awesome. Yeah, back in the day, I used to pack up the family, and we would go from leave about 6 p.m. from Montana and get to Disneyland the next day. Drive all night at 3 o'clock, and a lot of those places in between where I grew up and Southern California, I never really got to spend any time at. Especially the desert areas in Utah and Moab and places like that. So that's kind of on the list. But I think Slab City is one of those places that has this mystique about it. And the people, I mean, there's a lot of artists that live there. There's a guy who built that mountain. I think it's called Salvation Mountain. It's made out of, I think, sand and concrete and latex paint. And it's an interesting place. And I know it's kind of an artist venue, and they do some concerts there. And, and it's a bit paranormal. So what other shows on your podcast have you done that you consider paranormal?
Paranormal. So I did. I haven't done too many lately. I've been doing a lot more. I'm just liking it more and more, And so I did the one about my ghost story, which is when I talked about I lived in that one house and I saw a lot of shadow people. That was interesting. There was a lot of negative energy in there. I wouldn't say they're evil, but they definitely mess with me a lot. They're little troublemakers, I would say.
So how old were you when you started seeing shadow people?
Maybe around 14. I was like in 8th grade around there, maybe freshman year.
And then how did that develop? I mean, what was your first sighting, and what was that like, and why'd you stay?
I know, right? Pretty much it was, just late at night, just laying in bed. I couldn't sleep. You look around your room and you see dark corners and stuff. But I started to notice shapes of people, shadows on my walls. And the more I noticed, I thought it was my eyes messing with me, because it gets dark and your eyes kind of try and make things out. Oh, your mind messes with you, right?
Right.
I thought that was it. But the more and more I stared, for hours I stared at my walls, and these shadows were moving just like people, like almost like very curious, like they're trying to figure me out as I was trying to figure them out. And there were different shapes and sizes. Some were like children types, some were very tall and skinny. And they were all over my walls, almost like a big crowd observing me. And it was scary. I didn't want to tell nobody, because I'm like, maybe what if I'm crazy, I'm like, hey, did you see that? And they're like, what are you talking about? So for a while, I really didn't talk about it. I just kind of dealt with it. And I would, it sounds kind of funny, but I would try and talk to them. I'd tell them like, hey, what do you want? Hey, go away. You're dead. Move on. But no response. They never talked to me. But after a while, I started telling people, like my friends, my best friends. One time, we're playing video games all night, and they spent the night, and we're gonna go to sleep. And I'm like, hey guys, I'm gonna turn off the lights, but look around the walls. Tell me what you see. I just wanted to see their feedback without influencing anything. I just wanted to hear what they saw. Maybe if they look at the wall and they're like, I don't see nothing, and I see shadows, okay, well, maybe I'm crazy, right? So I turn off the lights, and they're like, what the hell, man? Like, they saw the shadows. They're like, is that a shadow? What is that? And I'm like, do you see it? They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, where is it? What is he doing? And they would describe exactly what I'm seeing. And one of my friends, he actually called his mom and went home. He was freaked out. My other friend, we actually stayed up all night looking at the shadows and just describing what they were doing. And we were seeing the same thing. And that was kind of like a cool moment, because, it was like, okay, this is proof that I'm not crazy. Now, what do I do? So I told my mom, and she's old school Mexican Catholic. She got holy water from the church and sprinkled it all over my room. And I don't know if it just in my head, but it worked for like a couple days, and then they came back. But they would do very weird things. Like, I had a stereo and speakers all around my room, and late at night I was playing video games. Well, it turned on by itself, and I put the volume on low, and I don't know why I didn't turn it off, but a little bit later I was playing, and the volume went full blast. Oh my God, it scared me so bad. It was really bad. I couldn't sleep that night. And talking about sleep, also in that house, I experienced a lot of sleep paralysis.
Let me back up and just ask you a question really quick, because one of the things that you said that really interested me was the fact that you were talking to them, and you referred to them as dead, and a lot of people have different theories on what exactly these are. I don't know if you listened to the old Coast to Coast with Art Bell, but he had a thing for shadow people, and always talking about shadow people. And after listening to all those shows, I really never got a good grasp of what these possibly were. To me, it was, there's a lot of people that see entities in their house, they see ghosts, they see apparitions or whatever, but the shadow, I mean, to me, it had a sinister shape or a sinister part that to me is even scarier than your traditional ghosts that are in the house. But you were trying to make contact, speaking. Did they ever respond? I mean, other than turning up your stereo, did they respond with a movement even?
Mm-hmm. They would definitely move. Yeah, now that you mention it, their movement, their body language was very human, and almost like, you know, when you see something at a distance and you kind of slow down and you're like, what is that? And like, it was that type of body language, you know. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but these shadows were very dark also. Like, no matter how dark my room was, they were darker, you know. It was really easy to see them. And I thought maybe it was something from my window causing a shadow, but how could you explain human-shaped shadows all over your walls?
The other thing is, like you know, human, and you say they had human movement, and people really take for granted what body language. And one of the things that you know about body language, and you learn this, and not subliminally, but you learn it while you're growing up, is body language has kind of a beat, it has a shape, it has a rhythm. And you don't actually have to be staring right at a figure to know that it's making human movement, which is really interesting to me that you mentioned the fact that it had this human movement. Some people think that they may be extra dimensional from another universe, which there's a guy and I think his name was Chad Stambaugh or something like that, that he claimed to have recorded images of shadow people on video. So, and honestly, you know, it's one of those things that interests me, but I don't like to get into it. I mean, I just don't like to get into that realm too deeply. I had a couple exorcists on the show, and you know, one of them, well, both of them, but you said your mom brought in holy water and then they would disappear for a day or two, which is typical, because this last exorcist I had, he stated to me that, you know, once you start, you know, invoking the name of God and Jesus Christ, things like that can go away. But but not
crazy.
But not forever, you know. And so he's telling me that, you know, once he does an exorcism, and he worked for the Catholic Church, once he did an exorcism, it was typical to come back many times, like every maybe 30 days or every 2 to 3 months. And so it's not a
permanent solution.
So is your family still part of that house, or is that a house of the past?
No, it's in the past. I moved out of there like 11 years ago. And nobody has still rented that house because I live close to it. I'm still in the same neighborhood. And sometimes I pass by there and that house is still locked up, abandoned. Nobody has moved in since we left.
Really? That's interesting. And you were going to mention sleep paralysis. And one of the things and now this is new to me because, you know, I have a version of sleep paralysis, and I've experienced different things, and some of the things that I've had happen to me, I question whether it was sleep paralysis or not. But one of the things that I learned, and I did post something online, and I wanted to get some input from people about sleep paralysis. And one of the things that people suffer through is a shadowy, or, you know, kind of an indiscriminate dark shape approaching them. But, you know, it's very apparent. You know, they can't move, and it's extremely frightening. And they've researched this for a very, very long time, and there's still the jury's out on what causes this. So, what's your version of sleep paralysis?
Well, so, you know, I've recent years I've done research on it, trying to like come up with what is it, right? But there's scientific explanations for it. Like, you know, you wake up during your REM sleep, but you're still in a half dreaming state, and you're body actually releases a chemical while you're in REM sleep, so you don't act out in your dreams in real life, right? You wake up to your spouse or something, you know. And but when I experienced it, it was really scary. Most of the time, it was just waking up in the middle of the night, and you cannot move, no matter how hard you try. I would try to use all my strength, and I would fight it. And as soon as I start like moving a finger or something, then boom, I'm released. And just a couple times I did see a shadow like standing next to me while that happened, but most of the times I didn't see a figure or something. It was just me paralyzed, fighting for it. Most of the time it was happening while I was awake, because you know, I was with these shadow people. Like, I was scared to sleep at night without a light, you know, so I would leave the TV on. And so when I wake up in sleep paralysis, the TV's on in the background. And when I come out of it, you know, the same thing is on the television. But sometimes it was kind of like a dream, because I would wake up in the middle of the night and I have sleep paralysis. I'm panicked, trying to move. And I would like actually move, and I'm like crawling out of bed, like using all my strength, like something is pulling me. And then I wake up and I'm actually in bed, and I'm like, was that a dream, or did I do that? But most of the time, I'm sure I was awake for it. And yeah, it's a really, really scary experience. And, you know, some people say it's a demon holding you down, or maybe your body is astral, because some people believe your body astral projects while you're dreaming. So some people say you wake up and your soul like gets stuck trying to go back in. But honestly, all of those explanations, I would believe any of them, because it's really hard to prove, you know what I mean, exactly which one it is.
Well, I think one of the things too that that's really disturbing to me about it is the fact that there are people who wake up and they can't move, and they're very aware of their surroundings. And then while that's happening, all of a sudden they see something, you know, and it's either a shadow or an alien or some other figure that comes into the room or was in the room and begins to move. And so that's super frightening. I mean, it's, you're putting two things together. And, one of the things too, that it could last minutes or much, much longer. And there's other senses that happen. I mean, there, you can hear things, you can see things, you can feel things. So, and people, you know, some people experience one at a time. Some people feel something grabbing them, but they can't see anything. Or some people can hear something call out their name. I'm one of those people. So it's not,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't dig that one, man.
I've never had that happen to me.
I mean, literally, I'm about ready to go to sleep. And when I say I hear my name being called, it's not, it's very clear. It's never a yell. It's a very, very, audible voice that's louder than normal speaking, but it's almost like it's amplified. So if you know, I said Cameron like this, but you know, I cranked up the decibels, you know, maybe 3 times. That's what I hear. And it's super, super clear.
Wow.
And that one happens, I'm going to say, I don't know, 2-3 times a year. And, you know, if I ever have that happen on the occasion that they're really close together, like a month apart or something like that, you know, it takes me a while to relax after that. And I think about it.
It definitely shakes you.
Yeah. I don't want to hear it again. That's the problem. And, it's not evil, you know. I remember hearing my dad's voice, but it's always a male. I wouldn't say it's always a male voice, but most of the time it's a male voice, but definitely different voices. You know, it's not the same voice every time.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And other people, you know, I would much rather have that than feel something grab me, you know.
Yeah.
Feel something grab.
Did you ever feel it coming?
No, I've never had that, you know, feeling. And you know, people have, you know, they actually feel something on their chest, you know, and it's like crushing their chest, and they can't breathe. You know, they have a
Oh, wow.
they're paralyzed. The other thing that is really unusual is sometimes they hear humming, you know, like static electricity. And when I was a kid, I remember, you know, hearing this static electricity sound. And when I was a kid sleeping, there was a lot of static electricity, you know, in my bed. Like I'd move, lift up my blankets. Of course, when I was a kid, a lot of older materials were much better at static electricity, but wasn't something that, you know, that really let me have a good night's sleep, because there was something always when I was a little kid growing up that was happening. And, yeah, I got used to it. But you know, other people have, you know, tingles vibrating through their body or vibration. It's just bizarre. So do you still have this from time to time?
No, actually, ever since I moved out of that house,
Really?
I've never experienced sleep paralysis or seen shadow people ever again. Well, what I mean is that, you know, once in a while you see movement with the corner of your eye or a shadow and you look and it's gone. Like I still see that, but I never see them direct, you know, like I used to. But it's funny you mentioned tingling, because a couple times when I experienced sleep paralysis, like I remember one week it happened twice in the same week. And one time I was going to sleep, I was laying in bed, TV on, and I was like dozing off. And you know, you could feel like your body, like I don't know how to explain it, almost like pleasure, like, oh yeah, I'm going to bed now. But then I felt this surge of tingling go down my spine and throughout my whole body. And I knew it was coming. Like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I felt this surge of tingling throughout my whole body. And it freaked me out, and I couldn't move. Like, I was having sleep paralysis, and I wasn't even like fully asleep. Like, that was so bizarre. But it never happened again after that.
Yeah, I think it's more common for me. It's right when I'm falling asleep, you know, and it's not. I've woken up, you know, in the middle of the night and had some unbelievable things happen. But for the most part, the other thing I've noticed too, as I've gotten older, is the fact that, you know, when you, I don't know what that's called, and I want to find out more about it, but that sensation, you're about ready to go to sleep and you jump, you know, your whole body just twitches.
Oh, yes.
And now it's kind of a buildup and a slower process. And sometimes I won't exactly jump, but it'll kind of taper off. But the effect of it is still there. It's like in my body, it's like if somebody injected, I don't know what, some sort of weird pain solution into my blood instantly. So I have this jump that almost happens, but then this pain that is pretty intense, and then it tapers off, but it's everywhere, you know? And,
wow.
Yeah, so it's part of that thing, that trigger that happens where you jump, and it's really odd, but, it's like it like gets cut off in the middle, and it's just this pain feeling that's just bizarre. And, it's not pleasant, but you know, I hate to talk about these things, these things that happen to a body once you get older, but,
it's like it intensified, huh?
Right. And another thing too that interests me that I've heard people. So I posted this thing online about I wanted people to describe their sleep paralysis, and these people were you know, relating all these stories, and some of these things that happened. There was people that actually could see themselves in bed, and they were floating over themselves while they were sleeping. And they were convinced that they're awake, but they're looking down at their sleeping body. So, you know, there's that. And anytime you talk about any of these things, you don't talk to many people who have a pleasant situation. There are people that, you know, will tell you that, yeah, these golden-haired angel comes in and speaks to them, and that's great. I'm glad that they have that good experience, but a lot of people don't have that experience. I think that there's something called exploding head syndrome, and I think what that refers to is they have a hallucination that's really brief or very loud or jarring, which that one I can relate to. There's a nightmare disorder, and these are all things that could possibly be sleep paralysis. They can break it down into
different versions.
Yeah, different versions. Break it down into different diagnosis, like the exploding head syndrome, or people have a nightmare disorder. Of course, that's pretty self-explaining. Sleep terrors, which are very powerful. Panic attacks at night. When I was a kid, I used to have those, and I think I think one of the things I did here was the fact that if you are sleep deprived, there's a higher chance that you're going to have a sleep paralysis. The other thing is, if you add caffeine to sleep deprivation, the chances are. So when I was a kid, when I was 16, 17 years old, I don't know if you've ever heard any of these stories, but I used to work at a radio station, and I'd get there after school, and I'd have to drive about 25 miles, sometimes more, to get there. And then I'd get done like at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd have to drive home. And so when I was there, I'd drink coffee, and then when I would get home, I might actually, I might stay up and watch TV for a little longer. And so I think, that in addition to, all the other weirdness that was in the house that I grew up in, that I haven't even begun to explain all the weird things that happened there that, I didn't really even put together. So one of my best friends who lived across the street, he bought the house from my mom and dad. And, I think it was short, not long before I started this podcast. He called me one night, and just out of the blue, he goes, "You know what? I don't know what it is with this house, but every dog we ever had goes at the top of the basement stairs and just barks and won't and doesn't want it. They don't want to do anything else. You could put them anywhere in the house and they run right back to those stairs, and they're barking down those stairs." And I just kind of, that really doesn't surprise me. We had cats always, and the cats wouldn't go down there. And, you couldn't even get so if you walked down this hall, you'd take a left and you go down the stairs. If you went to the right, that's where we put the cat food. And, so this cat food is sitting there. So when our cat, or we had several, only one at a time, but over the years we had several cats, the cat would literally crawl to get food or water because it just didn't want to be its normal height going in front of those basement stairs. It's like it was hiding from someone. I know. Isn't that crazy?
That's creepy.
And then, so another time, I hate to be talking about myself, but I'm going to have you talk about it. I had
this is great, man.
I was in high school and we had this really weird thing happen. We had all these female mice, and we'd keep the female, or rats rather, and we keep the female rats, they're white rats, in one cage and the males in another. And these females were having babies, and they're all locked up. And, we couldn't figure it out, and we didn't think there was anything paranormal about it. It's just the oddest thing. Well, one morning, I don't remember why I was there, but I came in at 7 o'clock, and this gigantic male rat, he was a breeder. He had gotten out of the cage, and he was in with the females. He saw me coming. He opened the door, shot across the room, up above these shelves, ran across these shelves, jumped onto his cage, opened the door, and got in there. And
what? Holy!
They're that's a rat, though. That's another story. But they're very, very smart. And the interesting thing about it is we had a lot of rats. So, you know, kids, we started dragging them home. And, you know, I took like 5 and I don't know, female, male rats or whatever. And I had a cage, and we used to have some other animals when I was a kid. And I would take them down. My bedroom was in the basement, and the rats, you know, I had 2 batches of them. They'd last about a week, and they would die.
Oh, what?
I am not kidding you. They would die.
Like all of them at the same time, or like
all
one
at
by
the
one?
all at the same time. Like you would, like maybe they would, you know, they would be, the first day they would be shivering like they're cold, and it wasn't cold there. The next day, they'd be walking around like maybe they had some partial paralysis of their legs or something. The next day, you know, they'd be laying on their side, and you couldn't get them to move much. And, you know, 2 days later they'd be dead. And, you know, that happened twice. And,
what?
Yeah. I mean, that's real life, man. And that's, something that one of the reasons that I began to have a podcast was, you know, I've been in contact with a lot of people who were interested in things like we're talking about. And, you know, it was one of the things that I thought I could do to learn. And so really nothing surprises me anymore. And, so yeah, so there's that. So we're talking about
kind of used to it, right?
Yeah. So we're talking about sleep paralysis. We jumped on that, but sleep paralysis is one of those things that, fortunately you either grew out of it or moved out of it. What do you think?
Honestly, maybe it could be both. I mean, I think it definitely has to do with the shadow people, because once I moved out, I never seen them again, and I never had sleep paralysis again. But I mean, maybe it's just me trying to rationalize, you know, just trying to make sense of what happened. But you know, what if, you know, sleep paralysis is connected to people like us, right? Maybe we're more sensitive to the supernatural or other things, you know, maybe we're just attract things like that. Or
I'm going to say that with me, it's self-induced. And I wonder if people put themselves, you know, I'm a goer and a doer. You know, I have a lot of stuff I do. I work, you know, 55 hours a week. I podcast for 10 hours, 20 hours a week. I do all kinds of different things. And I have a son who
play the work.
Yeah, plays hockey. So I don't get a lot of sleep. And I love coffee, man.
You know, you have something right there, man. Cause you know, I've always been a night owl myself, and I've always been an energy drink guy.
Yeah,
so I think you're onto something there.
That too. And so one of the things that I like to do is, you know, I don't like to, you know, once I hit the bed, you know, yeah, I like to sleep, but you know, that's my free time. So I can watch what I want to watch, listen to what I want to listen to. And I love coffee, and I roast my own, and I got an espresso machine. I love that. And it's really hard for me not to have one because I love it, you know, I just love it, and I just crave it. So, you know, I've been in this house alone. And I've been here a year and a few months, and there's some things that have happened here. But, one of the things that, you know, when I'm alone, I'll just stay up. You know, I might stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning. I got to be back up at 6 o'clock. And I've had a few shots of espresso, and I'm jumping, and things happen. You know, I'm looking, you know, I start to fall asleep, and that's that point where I can look, you know, just about anywhere in the room. Maybe I might not see something right there in front of me then, but I'll reach this point where all of a sudden things get blurry, and then they clear up, and I can see images. And I'll have another show on one of these days, and I'll talk about that specifically, and other people who done that. But you know, what is this? And I've talked about these images that I've seen before, and you know, so I've experimented, you know, in the last year. I just do it, you know. I'm like, I got some good coffee, and I haven't slept good in about a week, you know, and I can sleep in, so I'll stay up till like 3 o'clock in the morning, and you know, I'm high on caffeine, and I'm sleep deprived, and my mind, it doesn't seem like it goes wild. But you know, it seems like I'm going to go to sleep, but then, you know, things happen, and I hear things, and I can see things, and nothing's ever, I shouldn't say nothing's ever touched me. I have a couple stories about that, which is really weird, but I'll tell them one if you don't mind. It's just that one. It's just one of the oddest stories ever. There's a gas station I go to. It's probably a gas station that maybe I go to like 4 times a year, but, and it's a convenience store. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's got 2 big bathrooms there. So if I'm, you know, in there and I'm going to use the restroom, you know, so I did that 2 times in a row one time. So I'm walking in there. There's really nobody in there. It's just super well lit, bright, you know, it's evening and it's not real dark outside. And I start to walk into the restroom, and you kind of go into this little hallway, and the first door on the left is the women's, and the second door on the left is the men's. And I felt something, a hand right in the lower part of my back, give me a shove as I took a right hand turn into the door. Right. And, I thought I was having a back spasm. So I'm like twisting and turning and, you know, trying to pop my back. And that's the weirdest thing ever. And then I walk up to a urinal, and I feel a very slight version of that. And I'm convinced right there it's a back spasm. And I've been known to have them, but not very often. I mean, you know, spaced years apart. So, maybe a year or 2 later, I'm at the same place, and I walk in, same exact thing. I mean, I feel this hand right on the lower part of my back, and it's pressure. I mean, it moves me. It makes me take another step. And people think about, you know, these places that are haunted or whatever. And what is that? I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm so up in the air about ghosts and things like that. I really don't know what to think, but you know, something like that, which is so unusual, you know, at a gas station, you know, that, I've never really asked if anybody's ever seen anything odd there, but you know, you never know.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the scariest part, you know, in the bathroom, somewhere intimate or something, you know, somewhere private.
And you know, the second time I remember, when I walked in the bathroom itself, there wasn't another little shove. It was just, I'm just in there and out. But you know, it just brought me right back, that memory. I was like, wow, this is the second time this has happened. And so I don't know. You know, you brought up a good point. I don't know if people, attract this kind of thing or, you know, I'm not one of these big believers who go around and talking about it. You know, here's where I talk about it. I don't talk about this to anybody, you know, other than you know, people are on this podcast. I never have. And, you know, these circumstances that I've had were very unique to me. But nonetheless, you know, there's this longing to figure that out. You know, only because you gotta believe no matter what, that, you know, we're here and there's more to our life than we know. You know, we're part of it. Sure. We're part of energy. That energy is gonna go on for forever and ever. So a really, really bizarre.
There's just so many things you can't explain, you know. I mean, the human mind tries to rationalize everything, right? We need an answer for everything, but we can't answer everything, you know. There's just some things that you just can't explain, you know. Right.
You see, there's some shows. I can't remember if it's called Mind Tricks or what it's called. It's on Netflix, and they do some visual and audio different tricks, and you can find stuff. You can find stuff like this all over the internet. But you know, one of these times I was, I'd moved into this place. It had a really weird ceiling in it, many different angles. So I'm going to paint this living room. It had all these angles in it, and I'm looking at this wall and I'm like, well, there's a right angle on this wall and the other wall is painted different color. Yet when I would turn the light out or we had sunlight, they're the same color. Or, or really, really like one was gray and one was green. And, you see things like that. And this was kind of the perfect setup somehow. So, I'm trying to paint and match paint, not realizing that, that what I'm looking at is the same color everywhere, but it's just, different. It presented itself different, and I liked the way it was. I just wanted it a little brighter. So it drove me out of my mind. And one of the things was, that I started to look into that and just how unbelievably powerful your mind works in trying to figure things out like that. I mean, it works, it goes into overtime and overdrive, and it just tries to make things work because that's part of who we are. Our mind is super powerful. It's loaded with different chemicals and receptors. And it's just, especially, you talk to people in these near-death experiences, and what happens, or if you're with somebody and they're dying and all of a sudden they reach that point and all of a sudden, they're going to go, but the brain is trying to not, the brain wants to hold on. Right. So whether you want to or not. So it starts doing all these things, little tricks to try to get your heart to speed up and try to, get your respiration to clear and things like that. And it just goes nuts right there at that brief moment before you die. And there's so very little research done on that it's just astounding, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, I find that very interesting also. Yeah. And, there's so much going on and your brain can only process so much, like out of everything you see every day, there's just a small percentage that your brain processed and told you what it is, right? Because, like you were saying about the illusions or, the mind tricks, when you question reality, right? Like, what is reality? Pretty much is your senses telling your brain, and then your brain says, okay, this is what it is, right? So I could see a wall and say, hey, that's great. And, maybe a colorblind person is like, no, that's this color. We're seeing the same color, but different perspective, different process, and I just
different
find all that very interesting.
and different from person to person.
Mm-hmm.
You could experience something totally different. We're going to take a little bit of break here. Stick with me, okay?
My Alien Life Podcast.
This is Cam Brower, and thanks for being here tonight with Chuy from Screaming Chuy Show. And I want to take a minute to talk about My Alien Life Patron page. What is it? Well, think of it as an online tip jar. My Alien Life Patron page is a website that gives everyone in the world an opportunity to become a patron and support the artists they believe in. The great thing about supporting My Alien Life podcast is you get to decide how much you feel comfortable contributing to each podcast. My goal is to keep doing at least 2 podcasts each week, and it's okay if you want to just put a cap on it and limit your support or match your budget. As you know, some weeks I get a burst of energy and I want to produce lots of new content. And if you just want to listen without becoming a patron, that's awesome. You still get to hear My Alien podcast for free. It's expensive to make a podcast. There's electric gear, web domain fees, web hosting fees, t-shirts, postage stamps, tinfoil hats, alien assault spray, and more. So no matter what you decide, please always listen to this podcast. And, ultimately, that's what I really want. We're a team, and your support is what keeps people like us going. So thank you for being amazing, and keep listening to My Alien Life, the podcast. And I want to thank Chuy for being here because you definitely had to open your wallet to produce something you enjoy. And thanks for doing your show because it really starts as a selfless and deliberate act for other people. And without guys like you, we wouldn't have this form of entertainment that brings us topics that we never would have thought of even 5 years ago. So Chuy, yeah, you just dug in one day and decided to do a podcast. How'd that start?
Yeah. Well, actually, I've always had a lot of imagination. I always love to create. You know, I love drawing and painting. Sometimes I would write. I'm not very good at that, but you know, I like telling stories and stuff. And people would always tell me like, "Hey, why don't you make a show?" And like, I'm like, "Yeah, well, it's easier said than done, right?" My buddy, he made a podcast, the Gefilte Show, and I'm like, you know what? If he could do it, I could do one too. Why don't I make a podcast? And it just started from there, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I was really excited about doing it. I thought about it like way too long. You know, I thought about it for years and years and years. And you know, back in like 2004, you know, I was listening to Art Bell, and you know, that was something that I really wanted to do, and I just never really realized that you could get into it at really any level. You know, there's so many people out there who are doing it, and they don't have really any listeners, but they just keep doing it. One of the things that I was listened to one of your podcasts earlier, and I wanted to ask you about. You did a show about Randy Weaver and Ruby Ridge.
Oh yeah. But with the FBI and all that, and
right,
their interaction.
Right. So, what made you decide? What were you looking at that made you decide to do a podcast about that one?
I just found it very interesting, and of course, you know, it's very dramatic. You know, it's like something that happens in the movies, but it actually happened in real life, which is crazy, right?
Right. So, the reason it's an interesting story to me because I'm. Ruby Ridge is just to the west of here and in Idaho, and I've never been there, but back, I think it was about 1996. I had this computer graphic place, and I did layout and all kind of stuff for anything. Could be a magazine cover, it could be a program for a stock car track, it could be business cards or whatever. And so that one night I was getting ready to go, and this guy came in, and really nice guy. And, you know, I just recognized him. I thought, well, this is somebody that I should know who he is, but I don't. He must be from downtown here. And I just thought it, you know, was somebody local. It turned out he was, but he sat down and wanted to know, he goes, could you see if you could, I have a couple files on this disc. This was like an old zip drive. This is long ago. And he asked me if I could see or get what was on the zip drive and print it out. And I said, yeah, I could give it a try. And, cause he said, I can't print it out at home. So I put in this disc, clicked on it, and, saw the cover for, Ruby Ridge and saw the book. And I was like, oh, this is Randy Weaver. Okay, here we go. So,
wow.
Yeah, over the next few weeks, he, would come in, and I did whatever, you know, he needed me to do. And, at the same time, I had this woman who would come in, and she, what she did was, she would book this, kind of it was a hotel room, like a banquet room, but smaller, that had a bar. And, she would set up tables, and, she would get somebody, and they would donate wine or whatever, coffee, and then, invite people over. And they had local authors that did book readings. So she came in one day, and I said, I was doing posters for her book readings. I said, you want to have Randy Weaver? His book is like, it was either just came out or was coming out. I think it was just coming out, because he gave me a copy of it, and I don't think it had been out yet. It was still pretty rough. And so she goes, yeah. And she called me and said, you know, he wants to have dinner with me beforehand. I don't want to, you know, what do I do? I said, just do it. And she goes, he wants you to come. So I said, okay, I'll come. So we sat down and had dinner with Randy Weaver. And here's the interesting part, because he's a very spiritual man or religious man, but he's a UFO believer. And
oh, I didn't know that.
Without getting into it, he combines that with religion, you know, and
that makes sense. That's very interesting, you know.
Yeah. So You know, it's one of those really bizarre things where, you know, I was just at the right place at the right time. And, I got a,
that's amazing. You got to meet him.
Yeah. Yeah. So his, you know, he's in his mid or early 70s now, I think. And the last time I saw him, he wasn't really in that great of shape. And, so, you know, I thought he seemed to be a very, very, back then he was, you know, very, very good shape and physically fit. And, so yeah, I think he moved somewhere back to Idaho, but he was in, you know, in my town for, it had to have been somewhere between 5 and 10 years. And,
man, you've met quite a few interesting people, man. That's amazing.
I live in this area that they come to live, you know, people come to Montana to escape, literally and figuratively. You know, they do. And it's just really bizarre. So, and I'm out there a lot, with, you know, all kinds of stuff that I do. And so I get to, and a lot of it's by accident, you know, I get to meet a lot of people by accident, and it's people like that really interest me. You know, it's like people that have they may have not done anything special, but they've been in extraordinary circumstances that,
it's very unfortunate what happened to him and his family.
Yeah, that was, and you know, they've done all kinds of stuff on that. I mean, they beat that to death, and they always will. That'll always be kind of the yardstick of what you can get away with if you're the FBI.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You know, and they don't even apologize, you know, they never take fault for it.
Right. But he was driving a really nice Mustang, and that was the first thing he came in, and I remember saying, you know, nice car, and oh yeah, you know, brand new, and yeah, he was. So, you know, it would never repair the damage done, but you know, he did win a little bit from that, which I was
got something out of it.
I was surprised, unbelievably surprised that turned out that way. But so have you lived in the Southwest all your life? You're in Phoenix, right? Or Phoenix area?
Oh, pretty close. I'm actually in Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, Tucson. I love Tucson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was born in Los Angeles, California, and I lived there till I was like 10. Then I moved here to Arizona.
So the Southwest, you know, is kind of a hotbed for UFO activity, and I'm not just speaking about Roswell. And there have been many UFO sightings, like in Phoenix and in Tucson or Albuquerque, and a lot of video out of Mexico. Lights. Yeah, Phoenix Lights. And I'm looking. It's funny that there's a lot of Mexican people that produce videos, and they're great. I mean, there's a lot of UFO videos that come from Mexico. And now that, you know, we have a Facebook, you know, you can see that. I mean, a lot of them, and then they go back, you know, years too. And so that's pretty interesting.
You see them all over the Mexican news,
right,
the news station.
Right. So, what about you? Have you followed that, or are you into UFOs, or is that something you may look into in the future for future podcasts?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's always interested me, UFOs, and just you know, just supernatural and stuff. And it's funny you mentioned that, because 2 days ago, so I get off work at 1 a.m. I was outside like 2 a.m. I was gonna smoke, and you know, it's dark outside, and I think I saw a UFO because it was weird. It was like a star, but it was red, and it was really fast. It just caught my eye. I look up at the sky, and I see a red dot. It wasn't flashing like an airplane or like a satellite, but it was like a red star, and it just went across the sky in a straight line. And I literally just like got up out of my chair and turned my head and just followed it across the sky, and it was gone in like a couple seconds. But it had no streak, you know, like a falling star, or, you know, they'll flash like they're breaking up. But it had nothing like that. It was just a solid red dot.
Right.
And it went straight across the sky in just a couple seconds. It's weird that it just happened a couple days ago.
Well, one of the things I posted a story today on, I posted it several times, but posted it today on Facebook. And last March, I saw a UFO, and it was in the daylight, and I always tell people, two things. One, if you ever want to see a UFO, come to where I grew up in Montana, which I don't get to see as many here. But I did have one sighting, and it was in March of last year, and just a super bright day, cold outside, and it was kind of warming up, and sun came out, no clouds in the sky, right in the bright blue sky, and I tell people, the other thing I tell them is to look in the daytime.
Wow.
Because people don't look up in the daytime. I mean, it's,
that's true.
Because that light that you notice that light, if there's a light in the sky, you can see all kinds of movement. If it's so much easier if it's lit up, but what about those things that are in the sky that aren't lit up? I mean, maybe lights aren't part of a spacecraft that's from another planet or dimension, or, it's, people are missing it, and the daytime is probably as good of a chance, I would guess.
Yes, that's smart. Actually, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there'd probably be a lot more UFO sightings if people looked up in the day.
Well, we just don't. I mean, we're navigating and moving around, and we just don't. And I was just really surprised to see something. It was fairly large, so it was something that I would have noticed. But then as it moved away from me, it was just the oddest thing, and we hear about these sightings of Tic Tacs, right? Well, this was a definite Tic Tac. And what I thought it was at first was an airplane with the wing tops or bottoms facing me. And they were white, and it looked like a wing, a left and a right wing with a little gap between it. Well, the gap, as I was watching it, the whole thing was kind of changing color, like the colors of the clouds. If the cloud was kind of grayish or white, really brilliant white, so it was turning. So it was almost like a squid or something like that underwater that has the ability to change colors on any part of its body. But as it became whiter, I could tell it was just one chunk. It was just like one big piece. And then I took a exit and kind of dashed across the overpass to get closer. And as I was driving closer, it was, when I finally got it in view again, it was about half the size, and it was moving exactly away from me, and until it totally disappeared. But the way it moved away from me, it was just this object in the shape of elongated, not like the Tic Tac we're used to, but more elongated, and it was just white. And to me, it almost looked 2D. It didn't look like had 3 dimension to it, but I was a distance from it. I was probably, it's really hard to say, a couple miles, 3 miles, but it was big. And then it was.
So they probably have like light bending technology or something, right? Camouflage like that.
You're asking the wrong guy here, man. I mean, it's like, I would say yes to just about anything anybody threw at me, when it comes to something like that, just because, that's one of the things that we as people who are interested in that, we're trying to find out. And
yeah, and I've heard quite a few of your episodes, and there's a lot of people that you talk to people that've been abducted, or people that worked in the Air Force in Area 51, and I forgot his name, but you had a two-part episodes where this guy that worked at Area 51 and his voice was distorted.
Oh, that was BJ Evans. Prior to that was Richard Doty, who was one of my favorites.
Was crazy, man. Blew my mind.
Yeah, I probably got. I think I have 2 to 3 more episodes of that. I mean, I got a lot on tape. I mean, I had originally said I thought I had like 5 or 6 hours, but I think it's more like 7 or 8. And
because you have a lot of good stuff. I love your show, but those were my favorite.
Yeah, that one just kind of, that one sticks with me. So I think about that one all the time, And there's really not a lot of ways I can present that other than the way I do. It's not like it was an interview, you know. I would just ask him a question, or I'd ask him, you know, and he would just ramble on, and I could hear him moving, like he was like walking around and then getting in his car, and then he would go for a ride,
or driving.
Right, and then he'd get out of his car, and you know, he would call me up, and you know, because it was almost like he couldn't believe I was there and that I was doing it. So he'd call me up, and I could hear his voice, what it normally would sound like, and then he said, "I'll call you back," and he would call me back, and he would just start talking, and he would talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and you know,
you probably just want to let it out so many years.
But, you know, and you know, he had asked me, like, first time he called, you know, what questions he wanted to know what I was going to ask him. So I said, well, when you call back, I'll tell you. So you know, the first question I asked, so you've been through a lot. What was it like? You know, and I don't even know where to start. And he just went. And so literally, maybe I asked him 5 questions, and he just, you know, he just said what he was going to say anyway. I think he knew what he was going to say, but you know, I haven't heard from him in a little bit, which is really weird. But I think I'll hear from him again. I'd kind of be interested to see what he thinks. I think if he would have possibly not liked what he heard, I probably would have heard from him right away. Probably would have heard. But
it's just delete that or something.
It's just weird, you know. I have people who will send me on Instant Messenger just clips. Like, they'll send me a message, you know, like, you can record your voice and send a message. You know, I'll message them back, but they'll just only respond with voice. And man, I've heard some weird stuff. You know, I've heard a couple of people that put together did their own music, and you know, they were singing, but it was just like literally from another planet. And I've never heard, you know, anything like it. And so it's been interesting, you know, and you'll run into that too. You know, I like the fact that you're doing some stuff, conspiracies. I was really thought that was cool that you did the Randy Weaver story, because, you know, that was something that I thought, well, maybe, you know, I'll talk about that someday, but I want to, you know, put a little different spin on it, and who knows, maybe it'll, you know, we'll find out more, or there'll be more to his story. I thought maybe he would put out another book, but, you know.
Yeah. And it's funny, because a lot of people I know have never heard about that.
Right.
You know, and I think people should know, you know.
Yeah. One of his kids still lives here, and I probably would see her maybe at like the mall or something once every couple years. I don't know the last time that I saw her. Very, very apparent, though. I mean, she's, you know, somebody that you would recognize if you really followed the story close. Let me ask you this, though. Screaming Chuy, tell my Alien Life listeners what you have in the hopper for your next shows, and where they can check you out online, because we're going to have to end this soon here.
Yeah. Well, they could check me out on Apple Podcast, Spotify, pretty much anywhere they listen to their favorite podcast. You know, I have a Facebook page, you know, Screaming Chuy Show, or my YouTube. I've been doing a lot more like behind the scenes kind of stuff. But I'll be adding more stuff, more conspiracy stuff. And yeah, I have a lot more planned on doing. I'm actually thinking about, I just think it's weird that, you know, this whole coronavirus, I'm going off subject here. But this whole coronavirus thing going on, I just think it's funny how a couple of weeks ago people in China were protesting, but that's no longer a thing right now. The virus is a thing. But I'll get into a little bit more government conspiracies and more UFO and supernatural stuff, you know, because I love it.
Yeah, the Screaming Chuy Show. Find it all over the internet. What's your? You have your. You're from Anchor, so you can check him out on Anchor, Spotify, and looks like he's everywhere else, Apple or iTunes, and also Facebook. Again, it's called the Screaming Chuy Show. So, Screaming Chuy, thank you so much, man. It's good talking to you.
Hey, and thank you for having me, man. like I said, I'm a fan of your show. I love it, and you know, it's amazing being on.
My Alien Life Podcast.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by Elion. You can find all Elion's work online at Heart Dance Records.